Attention firm owner, if you think your new hire training is the problem, it's not. By the time you get to training, you've already lost money. And if you don't fix this before you make an offer, you're essentially just setting cash on fire. Now, most firm owners assume their new hires fail because they need more training. But the real reason? They weren't even set up for success from day one. So, before your new hire even walks through the door, you have already made decisions that determine whether they will succeed or become a costly mistake. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to build a hiring process that actually works so you stop wasting time, stop burning money, and get some ROI from your hires fast. So let's take a look at this because I love this framework and it is one of the most important that I have taught over the years of working with firms and new advisors. So we've talked about the negative ROI cycle before. What is it? It is the time and the money that you're going to be investing into a new hire while you're ramping them up and getting them trained, right? You're going to be paying benefits. You're going to be paying a salary. You're going to be taking someone off of their tasks, which are already positive revenue for your firm, and they're going to be training this new person. And hopefully that's not you. But regardless of the fact, that person, that new person, is going to be perpetuating that negative ROI cycle unless you change some things, okay? So most firm owners are making these three big mistakes. You are hiring based on workload and not firm weaknesses. You don't fully understand where your team is operating below its potential, and you're placing new hires in roles where they can't thrive, so they end up underperforming. So I want to give you a framework by which you can start to think about when you create your very next job description, that you can use this template as a way to hire someone that actually fits what your firm needs, okay? So let's map this out real quick. We're gonna have to change the screens here. Okay, so the framework that I want to familiarize you with is called the Zone of Genius framework, popularized by 𝐷𝐿, the book, The Big Leap. So check that out if you haven't had a chance to check it out. But today we're going to briefly go through what this looks like. Okay, so in this top right corner, we're going to put Zone of Genius. We're going to use abbreviations today for brevity. Zone of excellence, zone of competence, and zone of incompetence. Now, I'm not going to go through and explain everything. Get the book about how these zones work, and briefly I will go through them, but this is not going to be an exhaustive video explaining the framework behind the Big Leap. So what I want you to understand though in this is that essentially everything that you do not focus on above this line right here is a waste of your time. Why? Because by definition, your zone of competence or the zone of competence in your firm, the collective zone of competence across all the people working with you, including yourself, are things that people out there that you can hire already have as their zone of genius or their zone of excellence. So if your firm is just operating below this line right here, then you are wasting money and you are perpetuating the negative ROI cycle. Okay? So the way you're going to fix that is you are going to find all the things that you know your firm does well. So if we just take a look at all the things that you do across your team right now that fits this zone of excellence or zone of genius, and we're going to list those out. They're going to look like your firm's strengths, okay? So when we're talking about these type of things, we're going to look at what do you do best effortlessly. without the use of conscious resources. That is your zone of genius. Now, you may not have anybody on your team except for you that operates here mostly, okay? And that's fine. You probably have a lot of people that operate in their zone of excellence, right? This is what somebody's really good at, but it requires some effort. They're not all the way to flow yet, right? So what you want to do is take those two big swaths of things and you want to evaluate your firm, okay? And everybody that is doing things that don't fit into those two categories, you're going to start making a list. And that list is what's going to populate your zone of competence, right? That list, and your zone of incompetence. These essentially are things that your firm doesn't do as well as you think they do, okay? Zone of competence is they do it, but it's not exceptionally well. It's not done exceptionally well. It's not at the level of excellence of zone of excellence and zone of genius. And zone of incompetence is stuff that they just don't do. You guys should stop doing this because no one does it well and you need to hire for it. Your new hire's new job description comes from these two lists. That is how you can make sure that your firm's overall weaknesses and those gaps are being filled by whoever your next marginal hire is. Now, you may say, Dominique, well, who's going to want to do our grunt work? Well, this is the reason why you may bring in a third-party consultant to help you wordsmith whatever falls into those two lists and make sure that this is something that's going to be attractive for the type of person you're looking for. Now, this does really well for, I would say, if you're hiring anywhere around the client service associate, junior advisor type of role. But Dominique, what happens if I really want like a COO or a CFO or a higher level advisor that's going to be able to start producing for me or do client facing stuff immediately? Well, what I'm going to tell you is instead of using the firm's collective zone of genius, the firm's collective zone of competence or zone of incompetence, you're going to use yours, right? There are things on your list of things to do that you currently don't have time to do. I'm just saying, if you're like any firm owner that I've ever talked to, including myself, then you realize there are things that are on your task list every day that you really shouldn't be doing because you're not really good at them and you don't care to get good at them. You need to outsource those. And that's probably going to be more in alignment with a higher level hire that you're looking to make, okay? So after you kind of map out your firm's strengths and then you map out your firm's weaknesses, this will help you identify what that role looks like at your firm that you actually need, right? You're gonna start to take that list and that becomes the crucial primary and secondary roles that this new person will fill. It also becomes a filter for the requirements that this person needs in the job description. Think about this as a job description that you're creating. So now you have primary and secondary responsibilities, and then you start having the requirements for that role. All of this came from that one list, or a couple of lists actually, the zone of competence list and the zone of incompetence list that you now need to start thinking about in the framework of a job description. Now, how do you make sure that in the interviewing process, you are getting the right person? Well, now you're going to go back to the original list from the zone of competence and zone of incompetence, and you're going to formulate questions directly suited to those weaknesses, right? So do you remember the crucible of conversation that we talked about in a previous video? This is where you start to craft the type of questions that you want this new hire to be answering. For instance, let's say that something that popped up on your zone of competence or zone of incompetence was account openings, right? And let's say your firm is currently you and maybe another junior advisor. Well, you probably need an admin or a client service associate as your next hire. Typically that's done the other way around, but let's just say that you hired your junior advisor before you hired your client service associate for whatever reason. Now, this client service associate is probably, let's redo this. If that is if those two people, you and your junior advisor, are the people in your firm, then one of the things on that zone of competence or zone of incompetence list is going to probably be account openings. It may be even cashiering functions where a client needs money and you need to send that kind of stuff out. It may even be trading that needs to be done to rebalance portfolios or free up cash. You get where I'm going with this. That should be their zone of genius or zone of excellence, right? So you're going to formulate questions around whether or not they've done this before. What do they enjoy about the financial planning process or their level of support in that process if they don't want to be a financial advisor? You're going to be asking those type of questions to see if they are a fit for those weaknesses or gaps that your firm has. And now what you've done is you've been able to, if you follow this all the way through, what you've been able to do is structure a hiring process that is centered around success from day one. Because now what you can do is you can say, we're opening up X amount of accounts a month. And what we need for you to do is to be able to open up X amount of accounts a month. All right. And so for day 30, your progression, new hire, looks like this. You're able to open up accounts. You're able to do cashiering functions, sending trades or making trades to send money to clients. Up into after that, let's say up to day 90, we're going to want you to do this, that, and that, right? You get this whole new structured path that for anyone that loves to do this or is really good at it, now they have this very clear direction as to what is going to help your firm and give them fulfillment and allow them to progress, right? So this is like just the best framework that I've been able to use with firms, and it works. So the bottom line here is when you hire the right person for the right role, then training doesn't become a struggle anymore. It's no longer a bottleneck in your process or your firm's organization. Now you have just have it as a natural next step. Okay. So in saying that, I want you to know that most new hires don't fail because they're bad at their job. They fail because the firm didn't set them up to win from day one. But here's the thing. Hiring the right people is just one piece of the puzzle. So if your firm doesn't have a culture that actually develops leaders in their specific roles, then even your best hires will eventually hit a ceiling and or leave. If you're an established RIA owner who's tired of making expensive hiring mistakes and you want help building a system that actually matches the right people to the right gaps in your firm, that's exactly what I do. Click the link below to book a call, and I'll see you in the next episode.